The gleaming glass doors of a towering corporate skyscraper swung open, and Dr. Maya Bennett stepped inside with a confidence that turned heads. Her white coat fluttered slightly as she moved, a name embroidered in gold thread just above her heart. A symbol of years of hard work, dedication, and countless sleepless nights spent saving lives. She was here, not as a visitor, but as a guest speaker invited to discuss groundbreaking medical advancements at one of the city's most prestigious healthcare summits. Maya had every reason to feel proud. As one of the youngest black women to ever earn a dual MD PhD and gain recognition for her revolutionary work in genetic therapy, she was no stranger to accolades. But today wasn't about accolades. It was about inspiring the next generation of innovators and building bridges in a field that desperately needed more diversity. The air in the lobby was charged with a mix of hushed whispers and admiration as she walked toward the reception desk, her heels clicking against the marble floor. However, not everyone was impressed. From the corner of the room, a man in a perfectly tailored navy suit watched her with a sneer. James Calloway, the CEO of Calloway Biotech, had made it very clear during past public appearances that he believed the medical field should stick to traditions and proven systems. To him, Maya was a threat, not just because of her groundbreaking work, but because she represented everything he couldn't control. Maya approached the receptionist with a polite smile. "Dr. Bennett, here to present at the summit," she said, sliding her ID across the counter. Before the young receptionist could respond, Calloway appeared beside her, his voice dripping with condescension. "Dr. Bennett, you're the keynote speaker," he asked, his eyebrows raised as if the idea was utterly laughable. Maya turned to him, her calm, composed demeanor unshaken. "Yes, that's correct. And you are." Calloway didn't introduce himself. Instead, he let out a low chuckle. "Oh, well, I must say, you're not exactly what I was expecting. Are you sure you're in the right place? This isn't a community health seminar." The jab was subtle, but the venom behind it was clear. The receptionist's eyes widened, and a few people nearby shifted uncomfortably. Maya, however, remained unflappable. Years of dealing with microaggressions had given her a thick skin, and she wasn't about to let this man rattle her. "I'm exactly where I need to be," she replied firmly, her eyes locking onto his with quiet determination. "And I'm confident my presentation will leave a lasting impression." Calloway smirked, leaning in slightly as if to challenge her further. "Let's hope so. But I must warn you, our audience has high standards. They won't be impressed by fluff." Maya's jaw tightened, but she didn't rise to the bait. Instead, she offered him a polite nod before turning back to the receptionist, who hurriedly handed her a badge and directed her toward the elevators. As Maya stepped into the elevator, she could feel Calloway's eyes on her back, his disdain palpable. But what neither he nor anyone else knew was that Dr. Maya Bennett had a secret, a power that went far beyond her intellect and medical expertise. It was a gift she rarely spoke of, one that even she didn't fully understand. The summit was going to be more than just a platform for Maya to share her ideas. It was going to be a battleground, a test of her resolve, her character, and her mysterious ability. And by the time it was over, every single person in that building, including James Calloway, would see her in a completely different light. For now, though, Maya took a deep breath, steadied herself, and prepared for what lay ahead. Little did she know, this day would change not just her career, but her entire life. As the elevator doors slid shut, Maya leaned against the mirrored wall, taking a moment to center herself. The air inside was cool and quiet, a stark contrast to the charged atmosphere in the lobby. Her fingers brushed against the badge clipped to her coat, a simple piece of plastic that represented far more than access. It was a symbol of the countless barriers she'd had to break to get here. She thought about her journey, from the days of struggling to be taken seriously as a young black girl with dreams bigger than the small-town expectations placed on her, to her years in medical school, where she'd often been the only person of color in the room. There had been moments where she doubted herself, moments when the weight of it all had felt crushing. But those moments had also shaped her igniting a fire in her soul that pushed her to prove, not to the world, but to herself, that she was capable of greatness. The elevator chimed softly, breaking her thoughts as the doors opened to reveal the conference floor. The space was vast and buzzing with activity. Staff members hustled to set up displays, technicians checked sound equipment, and clusters of attendees mingled with coffee cups in hand. Maya's eyes swept the room, and she quickly spotted her presentation area. A sleek podium stood at the center of a stage, framed by towering screens that would soon display her work. As she walked toward the stage, her presence drew attention. People glanced her way, some offering polite nods, others murmuring to one another as they tried to place her face. Maya held her head high, her confidence unwavering despite the subtle undercurrent of curiosity and doubt that followed her. Near the stage, a familiar face appeared. Dr. Clara Patel, a fellow researcher and one of Maya's closest allies in the field, approached with a warm smile. Clara had always been a source of encouragement, someone who saw Maya's potential long before the world did. "Maya, you made it," Clara said, pulling her into a quick hug. "How are you feeling? Ready to blow them away?" Maya smiled, though her thoughts lingered on Calloway's earlier comment. "I'm ready," she said simply, her voice steady. Clara's eyes narrowed slightly, as if she could sense something was off. "Let me guess. Calloway said something, didn't he?" Maya hesitated for a moment before nodding. "Nothing I haven't heard before," she replied. "He doesn't think I belong here." Clara sighed, her expression a mix of frustration and empathy. "That man is a relic. Don't let him get to you. You're here because you've earned it, and no one can take that away from you." Maya nodded, appreciating Clara's support. "Thanks, Clara. I needed to hear that." Clara gave her arm a reassuring squeeze. "Anytime. Now go out there and show them what brilliance looks like." As Clara walked away, Maya took a deep breath, her focus shifting to the presentation ahead. But even as she mentally rehearsed her opening lines, a strange sensation prickled at the edges of her awareness. It wasn't something she could explain. It was more of an instinct, a subtle yet undeniable feeling that something about today was different. She shook it off, chalking it up to nerves, and stepped onto the stage to test the equipment. The technician greeted her with a friendly smile and handed her a small device to advance her slides. As Maya glanced at the first slide, a vivid image of a DNA strand glowing against a black background, she felt a surge of excitement. This was her moment to share her work, to make a difference. But just as she began her practice run, she noticed Calloway lingering near the back of the room, his arms crossed and his expression unreadable. His presence was a shadow over the otherwise bright moment, a reminder that not everyone in the room was rooting for her. Maya pushed through, her voice steady as she rehearsed her lines. She had faced tougher challenges than this, and she wasn't about to let one man's disdain undermine her. As the room began to fill with attendees, the energy shifted. The hum of conversations grew louder, and the seats quickly filled. Maya stepped aside to let the event organizers introduce her, her pulse quickening as she waited for her turn. When the moment came, she walked back onto the stage to a polite round of applause. Her gaze swept the audience, taking in the mix of curious faces. Some looked intrigued, others skeptical. And then there was Calloway, sitting in the front row with a faint smirk, as if daring her to impress him. Maya began her presentation, her voice clear and confident as she outlined the groundbreaking research she dedicated her life to. She spoke of genetic markers, revolutionary therapies, and the potential to cure diseases that had plagued humanity for centuries. Her passion was evident in every word, and as the presentation unfolded, she noticed the expressions in the audience shifting. But just as she reached a critical point in her talk, the sensation from earlier returned, stronger this time. It was as if an invisible current was pulling at her, a force she couldn't ignore. She paused for a split second, her hand gripping the podium as she steadied herself. The audience murmured, but Maya quickly recovered, brushing off the strange feeling and continuing with her presentation. Yet the sensation lingered, a low hum in the background of her thoughts. When she finished, The room erupted into applause, louder and more enthusiastic than she had expected. Maya's chest swelled with a mix of relief and pride as she stepped back from the podium. But just as she began to descend the stage, Calloway stood up, clapping slowly with a smile that didn't reach his eyes. "Impressive," he said, his voice carrying over the applause. "But I have to wonder, how much of this is theory and how much is practical application? After all, theories don't save lives." The room fell silent, the tension thick enough to cut with a knife. Maya turned to face him, her expression calm, but her mind racing. "Every theory starts with a question," she replied evenly. "And every breakthrough begins with the courage to pursue the answers." Calloway tilted his head, his smile widening. "Courage is one thing. Results are another. And until you deliver results, Dr. Bennett, I'm afraid your ideas remain hypothetical." Maya felt the weight of his words, but she refused to back down. "Then perhaps you should pay closer attention, Mr. Calloway. Because the results are already here, you just haven't been looking in the right place." The tension in the room was electric, the air thick with unspoken challenges and defiance. But even as Maya stood her ground, the strange sensation from before surged again, stronger than ever. It was as if something deep within her was waking up, something powerful and uncontrollable. She clenched her fists, her pulse racing as she fought to maintain her composure. Whatever was happening, it wasn't over yet. And Maya had the unsettling feeling that this was only the beginning. Maya could still feel Calloway's gaze boring into her back as she left the stage. The tension in the room hadn't dissipated, even though the applause had finally died down. She tried to focus on the people around her. Colleagues offering congratulatory handshakes, attendees asking questions about her work, but her mind was elsewhere. That strange feeling, like something just beneath the surface of her being was stirring, wouldn't let her go. "Maya." Kara's voice broke through the haze. She appeared at her side, her expression a mixture of pride and concern. "You were amazing up there. Don't let Calloway's nonsense get to you. It thrives on making people doubt themselves." "I know," Maya said softly, though her words felt distant. Her fingers brushed her temples as she tried to push away the disorienting sensation. "It's not just him. Something feels off." Clara frowned. "Off how?" Maya shook her head. "I don't know. It's hard to explain. Like I'm standing on the edge of something huge, but I can't see what it is." Before Clara could respond, one of the event coordinators approached, gesturing for Maya to follow. "Dr. Bennett, there's a panel discussion starting soon, and we'd love for you to join. The audience is eager to hear more about your research." Maya nodded, grateful for the distraction, and followed the coordinator toward the panel room. Clara squeezed her arm reassuringly before stepping back, mouthing, "You've got this." The panel discussion was lively, with industry leaders debating the future of medical technology. Maya contributed thoughtfully, sharing insights from her work while deftly fielding questions from the audience. But even as she spoke, that same unshakable feeling lingered, making her hyper-aware of every sound, every movement, every flicker of light in the room. And then it happened. Midway through answering the question about genetic sequencing, Maya felt a jolt, a sudden, sharp surge of energy coursing through her body. It wasn't painful, but it was overwhelming, like a tidal wave crashing against her senses. She froze, her words caught in her throat as her vision blurred for a moment. "Maya," one of the panelists prompted, his tone cautious. She blinked rapidly, forcing herself to regain focus. "I'm sorry," she said, her voice steady but quieter. "I lost my train of thought." The audience murmured, some exchanging curious glances. Maya quickly redirected the conversation, her professionalism masking the inner turmoil she felt. But she couldn't ignore the looks of concern or suspicion from those around her. After the panel, Maya excused herself and slipped away to a quieter part of the building. She needed a moment to breathe, to figure out what was happening. The adrenaline coursing through her veins made her hands tremble, and she leaned against the wall, closing her eyes in an attempt to calm herself. "Maya," a familiar voice called out. She opened her eyes to see Calloway approaching, his expression unreadable. "Not now," she said firmly, but he ignored her, stopping a few feet away. "Quite the performance today," he said, his tone dripping with condescension. "But I have to say you seemed distracted. Is everything all right?" Maya's jaw tightened. "I don't have time for whatever game you're playing, Calloway." His smirk deepened. "No game, Dr. Bennett. Just an observation. You see, people like you, people who think they're untouchable, often crack under pressure. And from where I'm standing, you're starting to crack." Something inside Maya snapped. She stepped closer to him, her voice low but unwavering. "You don't know anything about me or what I'm capable of. So if you're trying to intimidate me, save your breath. I've dealt with worse than you." Calloway's smirk faltered for a fraction of a second, and Maya caught it. She turned and walked away, her pulse pounding in her ears. But as she moved, she couldn't shake the feeling that Calloway's words carried more weight than mere insults. Later that evening, after the conference sessions had ended, Maya sat alone in her hotel room. The city lights glimmered outside the window, but her focus was on the laptop in front of her. She had pulled up the data from her latest experiments, hoping to distract herself with work. As she reviewed the numbers, a strange pattern caught her eye. It was subtle, almost imperceptible, but it was there, a series of anomalies in the genetic markers she'd been studying. They weren't mistakes or errors, they were something else entirely. Her heart raced as she dove deeper, cross-referencing the data with older files. The patterns were consistent, repeating across different samples. It was as if the DNA was responding to something, adapting in ways that defied known science. Maya leaned back in her chair, her mind racing. Was this connected to what she had been feeling all day? The timing was too coincidental to ignore. But if her research was uncovering something this groundbreaking, why hadn't she noticed it before? The sound of her phone vibrating broke her concentration. She glanced at the screen to see an unknown number. Hesitant, she answered. "Dr. Bennett?" A deep voice asked. "Yes, who is this?" "I can't give my name," the voice said, low and urgent. "But I need you to listen carefully. Your work has drawn attention, dangerous attention. You need to be careful." Maya's grip on the phone tightened. "What are you talking about? Who are you?" "I'm someone who wants to help," the voice said. "But there are people who don't want your research to see the light of day. They'll do whatever it takes to stop you. Trust no one." The line went dead before she could respond. Maya stared at the phone, her heart pounding. She didn't know who the caller was or if they could be trusted, but their words sent a chill down her spine. Whatever was happening, it was bigger than she had imagined, and Maya had the sinking feeling that she was at the center of it all.